It was a dark and stormy night when the world ended again. That's often how it went, but not quite like this. The heavens slowly blackened over a week, casting oily shadows on the land, until a single great umbral cloud eclipsed the planet. Then the strikes started, like 1,000 lashing whips, an unyielding epilepsy of energy batted between ground and atmosphere. When a bolt finally got me, I was on my deck, watching behind plastic sunglasses as the town below burned. Then before I even heard it, my head was full of light and dynamite. My last thought was confusion over whether the pain in my palm was my martini glass shattering or thunder erupting from my fingers like cauterized razors. And then I awoke. 6 a.m. The quiet sunrise through my blinds begged me to just flip the pillow over and hit snooze, but sooner or later, I'd have to figure out what month it was, and what clothes were even in my closet. The first time, I was about 23. Whether it's how things were always meant to go, or I'd slipped into someplace else the evening prior, some cosmic metamorphosis decided that was my moment. That morning, every volcano must have erupted simultaneously. Rocky debris rained from a scorching sky, and lava oozed from withering grass like hot pus. Pulsing panic squeezed my eyes and chest like my blood was concrete. Soaked palms, dilated pupils, feet frozen in the middle of a public park, unable to tell its trembling from my own. But when the smoke engulfed me, and darkness suffused me, it didn't hurt. It was more uncomfortable, like growing pains or the flu. Unpleasant, but somehow transitory. And then I awoke. I was back in my dorm room, clean enough, and decidedly fire-free. According to my phone, propped up against a second-hand macroeconomics textbook, per usual that semester, it was about 2 weeks in the past. What the hell had I just experienced? A vivid dream? I'd read stories of people getting into car accidents and fantasizing a whole life while comatose. A premonition? Time travel? I wasn't a pious person, I recall that much, but I settled on divine intervention. But for what purpose? I found religion pretty quickly. No religion in particular. I tried a little of everything to see what might indicate my salvation. Nothing did, but the search kept me sane, and for that I'm grateful. I still carry a rosary and some other sacred trinkets when I can spare the storage space. When I pray, it's just to ask God what the big idea is, but for better or worse, there's never been a rapture. No chance to learn how intelligent this whole design truly is. Sometimes there's signs in the headlines or online gossip. Other times, it's sudden. Once, gravity abruptly reoriented, and I spent my last seconds careening at a 33-degree angle into an adjacent office building as my eardrums ruptured from the roar of oceans rising and structures unbuckling from ancient supports. A few years ago, it was the exosphere lowering. Some satellite caught the wrong solar wind and the threshold of space drew ever closer. Planes had to be grounded when flights started going up and never coming down. Clouds grew sparse, droughts frequent. By that autumn, you'd get the bins from climbing any higher than a flagpole. As the sky itself floated away, we retreated to cave systems and hitherto hidden military bases, entombed until the vacuum found us and terra firma blew into the ether along with my body. Bloated as a beached whale, swollen tongue icing over, I stared into the stars until infinity became the skin of my own eyelids, and I blinked to behold a stucco ceiling and the crest of my comforter. Even after so long, it's hard to say which is worse, but I think the quick ones take it. Either way, the ache of inevitability lingers. At least when I can see it looming on the horizon, I can make peace with the here and now and plan accordingly. There's also a spectacle to the spiral, a novelty to the tragedy that I can look back on with awe or relief. But when the good days turn into good months, hope starts to seep in like a leaky pin through a pocket. Maybe I've beaten it. Maybe this term in my cell has run its course. Foreign concepts return home. Goals, romance. Wondering what's hitting theaters this winter. Then I'll keel over or catch flame and the stage resets. But I don't always die. Sometimes I just fall asleep under crumbling rubble or a quarantine tent and awaken back beneath cool sheets, chickadees chirping and traffic noise thrumming through the window. It takes a warm shower and a whiskey sour or 3 until I'm ready to even go outside. I'll need a day or 2 more to get my head on straight, to not reach into my waistband for a pistol that's no longer there when a bus backfires or a dog barks. Self-medication remains the most efficient kind. I tried therapy, but it's hard to get treated for PTSD when the trauma technically never happened. It's one thing to come back from your own demise, but quite another to come back from everyone else's. There are slight differences every season, but nothing extreme. Until the end begins, everything's downright normal. Yet how can I, of all people, say what's normal? It's all relative, I reckon. Even I follow a pattern, though it took me a while to notice and even longer to calculate. Each season is approximately 91 days long. 91 days, and the end, whatever that may be, comes once more, whether I join it or not. With each revert comes a slight rewind, approximately 12 days prior to the latest calamity. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Just enough for deja vu, but not enough to turn the future in my favor. It's not precise. Sometimes I get a few days more or fewer. Like a migratory pattern, it's not mechanical, not bound by anything so human as order. But if it's an aberration of chemistry, it's not the only one. Sometimes the end comes from natural forces, be it physics defying our theories or the animal kingdom delivering a long overdue comeuppance. One of the stranger ones was an outbreak of spontaneous freezing. I won't pretend to understand the science, but basically, the laws of thermodynamics zigged where they should have zagged, and people's atoms began randomly hitting absolute zero. Of all the sights that shock me awake, when sirens and shouting haven't, the most indelible is a woman running through the produce aisle at the corner store, turning Windex blue in an instant, and shattering like crystal across the tiles. In another, the world was overtaken by gnats. Some domino effect from changing global humidity trends and a die-off at a particular spider subspecies. Great plumes of them blotted out the sky, thickened the air like smog. They were drawn to water, and so after sucking up every major city's aquifers, they went for the fluid in our bodies. Maybe everyone would have held on longer if it hadn't been summer, but sweat is a hard thing to control, especially when you're scared. I saw too many empty eye sockets swarming with flies before my own reopened to a new world. Other ends come from within. Humanity turning on itself, or by some social star alignment, stumbling on the gift or curse to end all others. For my 25th birthday, I ended up in a world gone mad with raving fans of a famous novel series. Something about its prose was so addictive, its characters so compelling, that the economy stopped as all people could do was flood the streets in full cosplay and dream aloud. I made a few allies, if only over ham radio while hiding from the anti-shippers in a boarded-up bodega. There was even a stale, abandoned carrot cake to mark the occasion. It was a nice change of pace to have a catastrophe that's little more than an excess of imagination. The conspiracy theorists have been right, but not as often as you'd think. It's never been aliens, but hey, anything's possible. It's been zombies twice after all, or maybe thrice. Are they zombies if they can breathe underwater? Robopocalypses are common, although the means differ. Sometimes the nukes take everybody out, a classic conclusion. In others, it's more insidious. A declined mobile pay app here, a threatening error message there, until you look across your patio and bam, the streets are full of those Boston Dynamics dogs, flanked from above by delivery drones like the Wicked Witch's flying monkeys. Sorry. I don't mean to sound flippant. I suppose it's a survival mechanism when all other survival is only inverted Darwinism. It's not as if I can keep many companions regardless. My circle of college friends didn't stick around long once I started raving about temporal loops and Armageddon at lunch break. As for acquaintances I've made since then, I've tried to track them across timelines, hungry for a glimpse of recognition, one consciousness bleeding into its neighbors like water through a stack of napkins. But they see me only as I was up until the turn, just another ghost in humdrum limbo. I've watched dozens of lovers, heroes, and sworn enemies regress to tired white collars. They may not know me anymore, but I know them better than they do themselves. Still, it's hard to make coffee shop small talk when you've heard someone's last breath before their favorite sports team. I've taken my own life a few times to not prolong the inevitable. After the one where lung cancer went airborne, I figured I should pull the plug while I had the strength to reach across the bed. If my family did endure in that universe, they didn't deserve the hospital bill anyway. For the most part, though, I try to stick around. Training has served me well. I've mastered Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Fencing is a good way to practice wielding a blade without raising red flags, and your local shooting range will never ask questions if the paperwork clears. I've killed, but only ever in self-defense. Leave the warlording to the ones who only get one shot at this. I'm sure you're eager for the grisly details all the same, but when the instinct takes over, I'm as forgetful as I've ever been. I didn't even realize I'd lost my favorite kitchen knife in a man's ribs until my wrist felt moist while barricading the front door with furniture. You may picture me a nomad, living out of a van or strolling the highways with a hitched thumb and a knapsack over my shoulder. But while the seasons aren't long enough to settle down, neither are they so fleeting that I can forsake stability. I've yet to discover what happens if I die prematurely, so to speak, before the collapse arrives in earnest. To answer Hamlet's question, I hazard it's better to bear those ills I have than fly to others that I know not of. So I keep up on my rent. I get a new apartment if the one that I have doesn't carry over. It typically does, though the utilities bill was never consistent. I figure out my debt and stay current. My car's almost paid off, and what my insurance doesn't know about where and over whom I may need to drive after the next few payments won't hurt them. I go to work, usually the service industry, a cashier or a waiter, or an entry-level office job. Right now, I'm a receptionist for a financial advising firm. It doesn't hurt to know when rich people suddenly want to start moving their money around. I've decided to stick with something humble, replaceable. Not expected to turn up or make decisions when the shit hits the fan. I guess sure, I could be in charge. I think I was studying for an MBA, but I must have dropped out. What's the point? I've never seen a case where I could have saved the day. I never stumbled across the shiny red button to stop the Cold War from reheating or prevented a virologist's vial from shattering and unleashing Black Plague 2.0. If anything, authority would make me complicit to the next disaster. Power wouldn't drive me mad, not after all I've endured, but finding out who else has it just might. I don't know what I am. I'm not an amnesiac, but something about this routine stews my memory, blends and liquefies it until there's nothing solid or distinct. I don't remember my childhood or what my parents looked like, at least not originally. They've begun to change, as do I. Skin tone, height, accent, gender, even name recently. Every different present, it seems, increasingly requires a different past. With each season, I rise to find myself more removed from the identity I once knew, like an unmoored boat drawn further out to sea with every lapping wave. But the sadness when Mom calls to say she loves me is always the same. I've taken to just ignoring the messages. Every response I found just prodded my brain to resurrect an anecdote. The smell of homemade blackberry pie. The crackle of an old television powering down. The softness of a woolen quilt between thumb and forefinger. Call it cowardice. Call it meeting my annihilation halfway, but if they're good memories, then I can't bear the nostalgia. And if they're bad ones, then I'd just as soon they stay forgotten. Like a wounded leg, I limp around my history so as to not feel its sting. Is it compassion or cruelty to hide your agony from those who'd want to heal it? Even now, they blink and buzz on my desk, notifications piling up like dust. We'll meet again, whether any of us realizes it or not. Some creatures nest in frigid peaks or the caustic, crushing abyss. Some bacteria swim in smoldering magma. Extremophiles, biologists call them. Perhaps I'm an extremophile of life itself, evolved to bear witness to the end of all things, one by one. Perhaps I'm meant to warn of what's to pass, a savior in training. Or perhaps this is my hell, cyclical penance for some forgotten wrong. Damned to die, not by erasure but revision, sketched over and over till my soul was a tattered fragment of what could have once been saved. Whatever it is, something in my DNA must flourish amongst destruction. The sound of screams and ambulances. The smell of burning flesh and stone. The taste of copper and ashes. The sight of my dentist carrying a severed head out of a pharmacy with gore-slick gardening shears in the other hand. Chaos is my calm. Judgment Day my suspended sentence. It's exciting. It's terrifying. It's lonesome. Even this path I walk, I imagine, marks only a fraction of all existence. I have to believe that there's others like me, occupying other realities where I was never even conceived, or crossing paths of my own all this time. Lately, I've tried to keep a lookout for folks who are all too ready. There must be a weary flicker in my iris when the internet goes down and the emergency broadcast system screeches from every speaker. So far, though, it's been hard to tell the survivalists and nihilists from my potential fellows when the system collapses. Either way, for the ones suffering this for the very first time, they must think they're doomed to wander a dead earth alone. So that's why I've left this recording, this testament. I can't promise it's accurate or satisfying. It always comes out a little different, every do-over complementing my own as I face the seasons with greater hindsight and yet hazier reflection. I got a hold of a computer this go-around, but it could end up on a New Yorker or stuff behind a dumpster. Different opportunities, different urgencies present themselves with every season. But no matter the venue, stories carry on where your conversations don't. If that's true over time, then surely it's worth a shot over space. And after scores of drafts, I think I might, at last, have something useful to say. If you're listening to this, I'm not sure what I expect you to do. I guess just take comfort in the fact that whatever you're going through, whatever you've been frightened of, I can almost guarantee you that I've been there. And even if I haven't, I'm sure it's round the bend. I can't share your grief, but I can assure you that even when it seems like all is lost, there's more out there somewhere. Life isn't fair, but there's so much of it. I wish we could enjoy it together someday. If you see me, you won't recognize me. I might still be working on recognizing myself. We can chat about the weather, or where to get cocktails, or our favorite movies. And when you say that we should do this again sometime, you might even believe that we've got a promising friendship ahead of us. But whatever you believe, just know that what's coming isn't my fault. I'm not death. But I fear he enjoys my company.